In this week's episode, I want to do a little self experiment. I want to do some comparisons of AI large language models. Now, if you know me very well, I'm pretty techie oriented, a little bit of a geek, a little bit of a nerd, and I really have done a lot of reading and studying of artificial intelligence, especially large language models. I listen to a lot of podcasts, read some books. And so I play around with these things from time to time. And one of the things that I wanted to know was how they would compare if we, say, give it a photograph of a neoplasm. And for those that are listening to the podcast, I'm going to attach a video that I recorded so you can visualize this, but I'm going to explain this as I go along. So what I have on the screen right now is a soft tissue neoplasm of the lower lip, left-hand side. The teeth are in poor repair. They're root tips, they have jagged edges, there's decay that has contributed to this soft tissue neoplasm. It's pretty obvious from the photograph. And this thing's probably 3/4 of a centimeter in diameter, irregular shape. It is pink, it's firm, it's mobile, it's non-tender, it's non-ulcerated. And the patient came in, this thing was becoming a bother because it was getting bigger and they were biting it when they were trying to eat and talk. And so they wanted it removed. And ultimately, the treatment would be to remove the teeth in addition to removing the soft tissue neoplasm. So the differential diagnosis, I wanted to see what artificial intelligence would say about it. So I looked around and I thought, well, let me compare three bigger models that I'm familiar with. Now, this is not all the models. There's lots of them out there. There's some that are open source, some that are closed. But the ones that I'm most familiar with and I play around with mostly are the ChatGPT model from OpenAI, the Anthropic Claude. In this scenario, we're going to use Opus 3. And then finally, the new hot one out on the market is Llama 3 by Meta AI with Zuckerberg. So those are the three that I wanted to compare. Now, in my prompt or in my query to the artificial intelligence or to the AI, I wanted to upload the photograph and I wanted to use the exact same wording, the exact same prompt for each of the models to see what it would respond with and see how good it would be as far as a differential diagnosis. So what I did is I went to the models and wanted to upload the photograph. I found that it's easy to upload to ChatGPT, GPT-4. It's easy to upload to Claude. Meta AI does not have that ability. And I didn't know that, so it's pretty new to me. I haven't really played around with it, but you can't upload attachments. And it said that you could potentially upload it to an offsite host and then you could link to it. So I tried to upload the photograph into Google Drive and then link to that, but it still wouldn't look at it. It wouldn't read it, said it couldn't do anything with that image. So I just went ahead and put the prompt in, and we'll cover that in the video and in the podcast as we go forward here. So the first thing you see on the screen is this soft tissue neoplasm. My differential diagnosis as an oral surgeon, number one, just for simplicity's sake, number one, a traumatic fibroma. That's what it looks like to me. That's what it felt like to me. That's what its historical background for the neoplasm sounds like to me. You could also add a mucocele because lower lip mucocele is the most common soft tissue neoplasm. Didn't really look like that because it didn't look fluid filled, but I added it to my list because it's common. And then I also put a lipoma because sometimes you can get a little lipoma that shows up like this. It didn't feel like a lipoma and it didn't appear to be a lipoma because they're a little bit more soft and they're a little bit more squishy for the technical term, and they look a little bit more yellow in hue, but it didn't look like that. But I added it to my list. So fibroma, mucocele, lipoma. Those are the three. So just for simplicity's sake. Of course, you can add multiple others to the list, including, malignancies, which you always have to consider in any type of pathology. But we're just going to go with those three for simplicity's sake, and then I'll talk to you about what I'm finding and what I found, and then the final diagnosis that by my biopsy and the pathologist report determined it to be the definitive diagnosis. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to jump into OpenAI's ChatGPT. I'm going to paste in the prompt. Can you give me a differential diagnosis for this soft tissue neoplasm of the lip? It is non-tender, mobile, firm, pink, and dome-shaped. That's the simple, just what I put on there. And then I'm going to attach the photograph as well. And then I'm going to submit it. And let's see what it says. Thinking. Based on the image you provided, the differential diagnosis for a non-tender, mobile, firm, pink, dome-shaped soft tissue neoplasm of the lip could include several possibilities. Here's a list of potential diagnoses that might be considered. Number one, mucocele, a mucus cyst that can occur on the lip, typically resulting from the rupture of a salivary gland duct and the spillage of mucin into the surrounding tissues. A fibroma, a benign fibrous tissue tumor resulting from trauma or irritation. Lipoma, a benign tumor of adipose tissue, soft and usually painless. Hemangioma, papilloma, pyogenic granuloma, salivary gland neoplasm, basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma. And they give little one-line descriptions of all of those. Given that the lesion is firm and dome-shaped, fibroma or lipoma could be more likely if we're strictly considering benign lesions. Mucoceles tend to be softer and more translucent. For any growth, especially if there's any doubt, a biopsy can provide a definitive diagnosis. And then it knows my profile in the system. And it says, as an oral and maxillofacial surgeon, you likely have a process for evaluating such lesions, which may include obtaining a detailed patient history, a thorough clinical examination, and potential imaging. Biopsy and histopathological examination are often the definitive steps in diagnosis. It's essential to consider the patient's age, the growth rate of the lesion, any associated symptoms, and habits like smoking or alcohol consumption, which could influence the likelihood of certain diagnoses. That's pretty damn good. That's pretty good. When we go back in there, I mean, it's it pulls up the photograph with the prompt, then it gives its answer, and it'll go back over those diagnoses without descriptions. Number one, they had is a mucocele. Number two, fibroma. Number three, lipoma. Number four, hemangioma. Number five, papilloma. Number six, pyogenic granuloma. And then salivary gland neoplasm was 7, basal cell carcinoma 8, and squamous cell carcinoma 9. So we give 9 potential diagnoses listed, and I think it's a pretty good list. I mean, considering. What I found interesting is it said that more likely it was a fibroma or a lipoma based on the photograph and the history, but yet it put number one is mucocele. So maybe that's because mucocele is the most common soft tissue neoplasm they find on the lower lip. I don't know. But still, from a standpoint of artificial intelligence evaluating this lesion and giving us a diagnosis, that's pretty spot on. I like that. I think it's a good response. So now we're going to jump over here to Claude, to Opus 3. I'm going to upload the photograph again. And I'm going to put the same prompt in. And let's see what Claude says. Contemplating. Based on the image and description provided, it appears to be a soft tissue neoplasm on the lip, non-tender, mobile, firm, pink, and dome shape. Without being able to identify the individual, here's a differential diagnosis for lip lesions with those characteristics. Number 1, mucocele. Number 2, fibroma. Number 3, lipoma. Number 4, pyogenic granuloma. Number 5, squamous cell carcinoma. It gives one-line descriptions of each of these. Mucocele, common benign lesion caused by salivary gland duct obstruction or trauma. They're soft, painless, dome-shaped nodules. Fibroma is a benign connective tissue tumor that can develop from chronic irritation or trauma. Fibromas are firm, smooth, dome-shaped, and pink. A lipoma, benign adipose tissue tumor that is soft, mobile, and slow-growing. While it's less common on the lips, they can occur in the location. The pyogenic granuloma description is a rapidly growing benign vascular lesion resulting from trauma or hormonal factors, usually red, dome-shaped papules that bleed easily. And then fifth, they had squamous cell carcinoma, which is a malignant neoplasm arising from the squamous epithelium Early lesions may present as firm, painless pink nodules or plaques, should be considered and ruled out, especially in high-risk individuals. Then it goes on to say other possibilities could include benign salivary gland tumors, such as pleomorphic adenoma or myoepithelioma, and less common malignancies like basal cell carcinoma or melanoma. And to establish a definitive diagnosis, a biopsy and histopathological examination would be necessary. Referral to an oral surgeon or an otolaryngologist may be warranted for further evaluation and management. So it goes on and it gives another really good description of the photograph that we included, as well as a good differential list for diagnoses, in my opinion. So I think that both ChatGPT and Claude, and this is a specific case. It's not saying that you should lean on AI for your diagnosis. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just testing this to see how accurate and how good this thing is where we're at today. Now, I think in the future, I think this thing's probably going to be as good as we are, if not better in some respects. If it can pull from all the information out there to get, and when we can get it to where we can share HIPAA information, HIPAA protected information with it, and it be secure enough that we're not worried about data leaks and cybersecurity attacks and all. I think this is just going to get better and better. And there may be some software out there. There may be some models and some artificial intelligence that already does this that I'm just not aware of. I'm just playing with the commercial grade stuff out there that's open source that we can use on a day-to-day basis. But I think it's a good little tool if you can put in a photo, an x-ray, or our situation and not share any patient-specific data and just put a photograph that's where you can identify the patient and you can put that in there and look at it. I think it's pretty cool. And I don't have any problem because there's no information specific to the patient or that is protected information that I mind sharing on this case. So that was Claude and Opus 3. Now we're going to jump over here to Meta. And for full disclosure, I've already played with this one a little bit, and I want to clear the chat here. I want to start over with this one because I wanted to see. Now, Meta, I mentioned earlier, Meta AI, Zuckerberg, Facebook, that whole group over there, this is theirs. And this has been the hot topic at the release of this particular podcast episode, is this Llama 3 that they released recently. It's supposed to be really good. And they have an interface at meta.ai that you can play with. Now, what I found very interesting right off the bat was that you cannot, or at least I don't see a place where you can upload a photograph or maybe an attachment, a PDF or a document, a Word doc or anything. You can in ChatGPT with OpenAI and you can in Anthropic's Claude, but you can't do it with Meta AI as I see it. So all I wanted to do was just put in the prompt that I had used in the other two instances and see what it says. And as I'm looking at the screen, for those that are not watching the video, it starts giving out a very good list. Benign possibilities, mucocele, fibroma, lipoma, and papilloma. Then it gives some malignant ones, basal cell carcinoma and squamous cell carcinoma. Then all of a sudden, this thing is clipping along, printing it out on the screen. And then as soon as it hits the end of that list, it drops all of that information. It just clears the screen. And then Meta AI's response was, sorry, I can't help you with this request right now. Is there anything else I can help you with? Now, I did this prompt a couple of times before getting on the mic here, just to make sure that I wasn't seeing something that was unusual. And I did it again, and it gives me the same thing. It talks about neurofibroma, squamous cell carcinoma, traumatic lesions. But again, it shows it on the screen, and you can read it, but it doesn't keep it on the screen. It automatically regulates itself, and it clears the screen. It doesn't say anything about it won't share medical information or talk about medical diagnosis or anything medical. It just says, sorry, I can't help you with the request right now. But it does give you the information as you see it prompting on and coming up on the screen. It populates the answer, but it immediately deletes it. So that's an interesting thing with Meta AI. So maybe they have some type of um, protection or guardrails within the parameters of the AI that doesn't allow medical diagnoses or medical questions to be answered. I don't know. I don't know the specifics, but I found it interesting. So those are the three things, guys. Um, ChatGPT and OpenAI, Claude, Opus 3, and Meta AI. Comparison side by side. Same photograph of a soft tissue neoplasm of the lower lip. Same prompt put in the systems, and you heard the answers. They're pretty good. Even Meta AI's list, as you see it, is really good. It just deletes it, so you can't keep it because it defaults to it's self-regulating and it's saying that basically I'm not going to answer that for you. But that's it. That's what I wanted to share with you this week. Play with that yourself. Again, keep it anonymous data. You can pull photos, maybe some stuff off the internet, and just play with it and see what you find. I did go ahead and use some radiographs that I had that didn't have patient information on it and asked the AI some questions, and it's pretty good. It can identify where I had done some coronectomies on some panorexes. It had identified radiolucent regions around the coronal portions of impacted third molars and give a good differential diagnosis there. So it is improving. I don't trust it yet. I mean, we're still going to have human interaction and clinicians and all involved in this. But I think it's interesting where we're headed, and I think the future of our profession is going to be altered for the good, I think, in most respects. I mean, you could be a doomsday guy or gal and think differently, but I think this is going to be helpful for us and maybe help us in our practices as we go forward. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on AI and what you think about it in regards to the dental profession and surgery in particular, and see what you think we're looking to gain or lose as we go forward in this. If you have any questions, Russell at oralsurgerysuccess.com. That's Russell at oralsurgerysuccess.com. And I'll post a link to the video that you can just go in and if you want to peruse the video that I put together, and it goes with the podcast audio itself. Thanks. Have a good one. We'll talk to you next week.